Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wandering Podcast, where we take advisement from outside the box. I'm Rihanna Ritter, your host. I'm an intuitive, sexuality, and authentic expression coach. Are you an accomplished professional who plays the part of having it all figured out? Who's strong for everyone else, but feels lonely, misunderstood, like you can't tell anybody the truth about how stressed you are, how not passionate you are about your life and all that you've created? I guide my clients to deep, lasting fulfillment. I re-engage them with their bodies, their pleasure, their desire. I help them align to enjoy fulfillment and prosperity in all areas of their lives. Today, I'm joined by Gary Chupik. He's internationally recognized as one of the top mental performance coaches in the world. Gary unlocks performance in professional teams, athletes, business professionals, and those wanting to find their next level in performance. Gary's unique methods and processes are unprecedented in the sports and business worlds and bring out the very best in each client. Welcome, Gary. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Briefly, will you tell us, some of the types of people you work with, some of the brands you've worked with?
Yeah, earlier on, it was all sports and working with college, at first high school and college, and then into the pros. And so, yeah, I've had a lot of clients in the NFL and Major League Baseball and major sports. And then over the last few years, it's been kind of an interesting evolution where 50% of my business is in sports and 50% of my business is in businesses, because the business world is soon found out that there's a lot of crossover between how to think for performance in sports and how to think for performance in business. So that's been an interesting evolution, one that I didn't kind of see coming. But when you think about it, when it comes to a business person, they're concerned about emotional regulation. They're concerned about motivation. They're concerned about how to replenish and how to recover. I mean, there's so much crossover. I would say there's about 80% crossover between what it takes to be a professional athlete and what it takes to be elite in business. So it's sort of a pretty natural, I would say, a relationship between mental performance and business. So it's pretty fascinating. And then big companies like Microsoft and Amazon are catching on to that kind of stuff. So I had the privilege of working with employees from those companies and actually all sorts of different companies all around the world. I've spoken at AI conferences and which is so strange to me that they would be interested in mental performance. But when it comes to sort of preparing yourself for the future, you do have to have the right mindset. And so I consider mindset to be the thermostat that controls the temperature in every room in your house. And so opening up an AI conference is a great privilege. And yeah, I've sort of done almost every business you can think of. So it's a really burgeoning industry. When you talk about mental performance, I mean, if you talk about mindset loosely, a lot of people can say that they're a performance coach or that they are an expert in mindset. But when it comes to the field of sports psychology, we really are, we take very seriously the ability to make someone better by Sunday, let's say. And so we're very much into the science and an application of important concepts in sports psych to be able to draw the best out of people.
Yeah, my first business coach was a former sports psychologist. So yeah, I definitely appreciated business is about endurance. It's about agility. It's about emotional regulation. Like you said, a lot of people don't realize that, how important emotional regulation is to just get through the day, let alone to thrive.
Well, it's true, because a lot of athletes, they play once a week, they play twice a week, maybe 3 times a week at the most. And when you're in business, it's every day, and you have to be able to regulate yourself and pace yourself to be able to perform at a high level. So it's not about the actual grind. That's not so smart. I mean, I often use the illustration of a boxer. Like what's better to be, a really tough boxer or a really adaptable boxer? I'll take the adaptable boxer any day over the tough one, because the person who's constantly adapting and growing and evolving will actually outperform the person who just is kind of like mentally tough. And I actually don't really care for that language, really. Like, what does it mean to be mentally tough? I don't know if that is really a thing, like who studies mental toughness. But when you talk about resiliency is more of an outcome. It's a combination of a multitude or suite of skills that you can learn as as a mental performance coach or as someone who's really interested in mental performance. And so, sort of that resiliency and, that sort of that toughness, it's actually just a combination of things that makes you resilient. So resiliency to me is an outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, the interesting thing to me, resilience has become learning to not be so tough, not be so authoritarian with myself. When I was grinding all the time and self-flagellating and like, you're not getting this right. So what are you doing wrong? How can you do better? How could you not know that? How could you not learned that by now? Why didn't, that ended up actually making me fail more than thrive.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like when we're talking about self-talk with athletes, one of the things I like to say is don't listen to yourself, talk to yourself. Because if you listen to yourself, it doesn't take much for your mind to wander so quickly about all the negative things that are going on in your life and your career and your family and your personal life, and that you're not measuring up. But when you can learn to talk to yourself gracefully, then it's really powerful. Like one of the things I like to tell myself personally is when I'm not doing well or I find myself spiraling a little bit, I'll just say, just come on back. Right? It's just an invitation to come on back to what you know is true, what works. Come back to your identity, come back to your rhythms. I like to use rhythms instead of habits. Sometimes habits evokes all sorts of emotions with people, but just come on back to your rhythm. Just come on back. And so I find that much less sort of self-flagellating, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's definitely more soothing, and rhythm feels less like a rut. Like we get those neural pathways in the brain that become just a rut of ruminating. And like you said, just, the invitation to come on back, because 95% of what we're thinking, we already thought yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before. And we are so geared to focus on the negative because, our amygdala, our ego, it's just trying to stay alive. And so it's looking for danger everywhere. But the vast majority of the time, we're not in danger.
Yeah, well, if you look for excuses, if you look for the negative, you'll always find it. It's always present. But where your focus goes, your energy flows. And so if you're going to focus on the things that are negative and difficult and challenging, and if you keep telling yourself that, then they certainly will be. But if you can sort of talk to yourself and say, no, I think I got this. I've been here before. This looks familiar to me. Or, it looks like I've dealt with these situations before. I have every reason to be optimistic that I can make it through this. And that having that kind of gentle, graceful conversation with yourself can go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are unlimited possible outcomes in every scenario. And we tend to think of the one, that's the job of the ego, and is to take past experience and apply every possible future outcome and put it in that narrow lane. And it was that one experience, one possibility. And so I like to remind myself, that's how that went that time. But again, there's unlimited possibilities for how this can go. So how do I want it to go? I'm going to focus there.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's something people in the business world that can learn from the sports world. So in the business world, we say, past behavior is the best indicator of future success, but not in the sports world. It doesn't work like that. What is the best indicator of future success is present behavior. And so you can always say, today I'm going to do things a little bit different. Today I'm going to do something I didn't do yesterday. And so I think that's such a great model to live your life by. And I think in business, it's the same thing. You can say, what I do today matters for my future.
Yeah, maybe it matters more than what I did in the past or yesterday. People are so defeated when they have that thinking, that your past performance is the best indicator of your future. Like, wow, that's scary, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a great book. I think it's called Feeling Good. Have you ever heard of it before? It was written in the 1970s, I believe. And I don't remember the author, but I remember reading that as a college student. And it has like 21 fallacies that we often think. And And I'm just like, at the time, it just struck such a chord with me. And I've never forgotten the book, Feeling Good. And it's about catching yourself in these mental fallacies. That, like, for example, if you think about the future, well, can you really tell the future? So one of the fallacies is that you're a fortune teller. Like, yeah, no, most of us can't tell the future with any degree of accuracy. And so, maybe it's just worth letting the future be the future and letting today be today.
Yeah. And like you said, where your focus goes, your energy flows in.
Mm-hmm.
And so like visualizing, a part of one of the things athletes do, right, is to visualize the best possible play or shot or outcome. And doing that mental exercise does assist with physical performance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pre-practice. So even before you practice, you can pre-practice and you can get mental reps in so that when you come into those situations or environments that are a little bit more high pressured, you've already kind of been there in your mind. And so that pre-practice can be really valuable, especially when you can recruit your five senses so that you're sort of constructing what that environment might be like in the present moment. And so you think about what you might smell and what you might see and what you might hear, touch, and taste. So there's a lot of value in visualization and mental imagery, and it can be one of the greatest tools in an athlete or business person's toolbox.
Absolutely. So how did you get into this field? I'd love to know, like, what were some of the struggles that you had that made you aware that this mindfulness is so important?
Well, it's really fascinating. I grew up in Canada and I went to a religious college in Canada, and I ended up being a pastor for 28 years. And I didn't intend to do that, nor did I want to. And so it's kind of interesting. I could sort of look back over my past and say, man, I wish I would have done this mental performance stuff earlier. But I just think sometimes we find ourselves in classrooms and taking classes that we didn't get to choose. So we have a degree, but you don't get to choose all your classes in the degree. You sort of go to school and there you are. And I just kind of feel like a lot of life was, for me, was taking classes that, in life that I didn't choose, but at the same time, I'm really glad that I did. And the last 3 or 4 years for me, my life feels like it's gone like hyper speed. I feel like I made up all this lost time in the last 3 years, and I've had the opportunity to travel and speak on stages all over America and the world. And so it's like, I just needed to surrender and align myself with the way that I've been created. And part of my strategy or mode of operation, even when I was in the ministry, was coaching people. I never liked to tell people what to do, even from the platform. I wasn't much of a teller. I was so much more of a question asker. And so doing what I do now just kind of feels like I've come home and I'm me, and I get to be fully me. And I just enjoy that a lot. So yeah, a lot of it has been the surrender. And there's two aspects of surrender. On the one side of the coin, you can say, well, I might have to face my limitations and humanity. Like, well, yeah, you are really human. And sometimes coming face to face with your limitations can be difficult. But on the other hand, it can be so liberating and so freeing. And so to fully kind of surrender to who I am and not apologize for it. Like, I'm a competitive guy. I don't have to win everything against somebody else. Like, I don't view people as competitors, but I do like to challenge myself to be the best person I can be. And so just to sort of embrace my competitive spirit, I'm okay with that. That's just how I'm wired, and I'm not going to apologize for that.
Yeah, there's so many parts of us that maybe one person or another thinks is negative, perceives as negative, and especially in childhood, we'll pick up those messages and then we'll spend all of the rest of our life in resistance to that part of us, that tendency. And the more we resist it, the more it is mirrored back to us in our outer circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that word, resistance. Can't remember. There's a gentleman, and I don't remember his name, but he's an author who wrote a lot about medieval warfare. And I just don't remember his name, but he would always, his primary sort of methodology was talking about the resistances that you can sort of experience that opposition, and it's oftentimes the opposition is within you. It's not outside of you. And so I think about that often. Like, I often say, like, your greatest opponent is you. You're your greatest opponent. And, I fight lots of stuff in me. I have lots of battles. And so to figure me out, and I'm the puzzle, and figure me out is, I think, that as a worthwhile endeavor, so that I can, fight the right battles and climb the right hills and pour my time and energy into the right things. But oftentimes I'm the one that I'm fighting.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. To get into, and I don't want to use the word victimization like it's so negative, but we can get into victimization really easily. It can be such a pattern, and it can be like, I'm dating someone and I'm not getting what I need, and so now I'm mad at the person. But when I look at my behavior, which I didn't used to do, I used to just assume that the story in my head was the correct thing, and that was what was happening. Now I look at my behavior and I'm like, well, did I ask for what I need? Like, and how is my behavior? Have I shown in any way that this is what I want? Actually, I've kind of acted like I don't care about that, and I've not asked for it. And so, should I be mad at this person right now?
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation, because when you feel like a victim, you feel helpless. And when you feel helpless long enough, you feel hopeless. And if you feel hopeless long enough, you get very discouraged. And if you get very discouraged long enough, you feel depressed. And if you feel depressed long enough, well, sometimes people feel like life is not worth living and there's no joy. And I think we have a culture that feels, in fact, I think in some ways we've taught victimhood. And in reality, you do have a lot of self-efficacy. You do have a lot of volition, more than we realize. And so a lot of people feel stuck because they feel as if they don't have options, or that things are immovable, when in reality, they're making choices all the time to stay stuck. And if you think about it, a lot of people feel stuck because they don't want to make a decision. And decision comes from the Latin word to cut away, like scissors. And so they're not willing to give something up. And the great historian and philosopher Thomas Sowell said, all of life is a trade-off. You're always trading one thing for another, constantly. But when you're stuck, when you don't want to make that decision. And so I think sometimes making the decision for good or bad is actually very freeing, and will free you from being stuck. You might have made the wrong decision, maybe in hindsight, but you can always course correct. Right. And it's never forever, so you can move on from it and course correct and evolve. So there's a lot of winning involved in making decisions and just moving forward.
Yeah. And even if it's the wrong one, you still learned something. So it was worthwhile. We're always telling ourselves, oh, I wasted time. I wasted this. I wasted that. And it's like, actually, I'm having experiences. I'm learning. It's not my job to know everything. I think our culture also kind of sends the message that we're supposed to just know things. Like, we're supposed to be right all the time. And speaking of decisions, like, the decision to not be right sometimes is the most liberating decision you can make.
It's true. I remember about a year and a half ago, I felt heavy, just mentally and emotionally. I just felt heavy, and I kept on wondering why I felt so heavy. And then I realized that I was making judgments all of the time. All of it. Did I like this meal? Do I like the weather? Did I like the way that my interaction with this person went? Did I like the TV show? Did I like the movie? And I thought to myself, wow, I am making judgments all day long, and I don't need to do that. And so I decided that I was going to start practicing the art of non-judgment. And that has been so freeing to me, because now I don't have to decide whether something is good or bad. And half the time I'm wrong anyway. Like, I'll think something is good and it actually wasn't very good. And sometimes I think something that wasn't very good actually ended up being really good for me. So I'm like, I just need to let it all go and live lighter. And I've just decided to live my life that way. And I find it a lot more joyful.
Yeah, I have very recently been on that journey myself of noticing, like, why does everything have to be good, bad, right, wrong?
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just is. And especially when we apply that to ourselves, I think when we're making a lot of outer judgments, it's coming from a lot of inner judgment. It's a lot of self-rejection. And when you start having more self-compassion, and more self-love and accepting all of the parts of yourself, which you'll never fully do 100%, but it's like, it's a fun journey. It's a practice of getting to know yourself. The more you are able to do that, the less you feel the need to be fearful and suspicious of other people out there and have conflict and right.
Yeah, it's really easy to justify our self-protection. But when you become vulnerable, there's so much healing and vulnerability on so many different layers.
People are so afraid of vulnerability. I mean, I still, like, if I go back to that example of if I'm dating someone and I didn't ask for what I need, why didn't I ask for what I need? Am I going to keep making that decision? Because then I'm going to keep doing these relationship patterns, right? They'll keep repeating. I'll keep not getting what I need, and then I'll be mad, and then I'll break up, and then I'll get in a new relationship and I'll do the same thing. Mm-hmm. So why am I not asking for what I need? Well, because of the possibility of being rejected. Mm-hmm. And then what? Oh, and then I'm going to self-reject. See, when you self-reject a lot less, you become a lot less afraid of other rejection, because you don't like chastise yourself. Oh my God, you got rejected. You're such an idiot. How could you even put yourself in that situation? How could you be vulnerable and ask for what you want?
Well, there's a difference between honesty and transparency. Like, I can not be very transparent, but I can be honest. Transparency is like I think of these concentric circles of transparency. With a loved one or a spouse or a close friend, you might be, very transparent. But with an acquaintance, you might not be as transparent. You can still be just as honest, but you can sort of pace your transparency. And I think that's a healthy thing.
That's interesting. Can you expand on that a little?
Well, yeah, like I have a 20-year-old daughter, but when she was dating, when she was 16 or 17, I would be like, make sure you pace your intimacy, like I think people want to go so fast these days. And I was just like, just pace yourself. Like, you don't have to tell everything to everybody or tell everything to this person. And I think there's such a desire to want to be known and know. And so, but it's really interesting how we were talking about physical intimacy compared to emotional intimacy, and how sometimes we let our physical intimacy get ahead of our emotional intimacy, and then we've got to sort of catch up. And sometimes, that is not helpful. And so it's just like, oh, wait a minute. Like, if I want to pace my physical intimacy, I have to pace the emotional intimacy. So if I could just sort of start slower and just sort of pace it. And, I think there's a lot of fun, exciting, mysterious things in relationships where if you do pace yourself, you kind of go, I kind of feel like I'm on a journey with this person. So yeah, I think that there's a pace and a steadiness to sort of transparency. And I think there's a healthy way to do it, and I think there's unhealthy ways to do it.
Yeah, there's this interesting thing, and I know for girls in particular, with romantic relationship, like, we kind of are raised to believe that romance is transactional and that sex is transactional, and that our bodies are kind of like money, like a tool. So we are very goal oriented because it's not necessarily that our caretakers or society wanted us to believe that. It's that a child just doesn't understand nuance always, like their brain isn't fully developed. So we watch these interactions between our parents, for example, and we watch how like mom will kind of withhold affection or attention when she's not getting something else that she wants. Or our mothers will tell us, don't have sex before you're married because, or like my dad, men only will ever want you for sex. So we get these kind of things, and parents think they're being helpful, but they're really being very clumsy, and they're not choosing their words wisely. And so this rush, this goal-oriented way of thinking Like,
Mhm.
I'm going to get into a relationship and I'm going to get married and have a house and have kids and have a car, and then I'm going to be happy. It's just not how it works. I like how you talked about a relationship. It's nice if it's a journey. Life is a journey. There's nowhere to get to. Wherever you get to, you can't take it with you. So what about the pacing and the journey and the enjoying of the
Yeah,
discovery?
agreed. I mean, you got to keep a relationship exciting. I've done, as you can well imagine, being ordained for almost 30 years. Actually, I've been ordained for longer, but being involved in senior leadership, you get a chance to do a couple, counsel a couple or two, and along the way. And one of the things I teach young couples is that when you're younger, your romance leads to commitment. But the longer you're involved in a relationship, it's actually the other way around, and it shifts. That your commitment to one another actually informs your romance and supports your romance. And so making that shift is so important, I think, in relationships, where you kind of go, oh, wait a minute, when I am committed to somebody, then then I feel like, yeah, I can, give myself romantically to them. And I think that's about the right thing to do.
Yeah, it does feel more, it ends up having a relationship last longer. The intimacy is more authentic and genuine. It's just interesting how backwards we get it. And
Sure.
when it's time to make that shift, like it's like that 7-year itch, right?
Mhm. Very much so.
Yeah. So when you were a pastor and then you switched into coaching, and you talked about surrender and surrendering to yourself and who you are, and like divine purpose, right? So how did that go? Because surrender for me has been very challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us some of the nitty gritty details that were challenging and rewarding and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, even today, I mean, it's easy to wear masks and put on facades, right? For, whether you're doing a podcast or you're speaking in front of people or you're coaching someone or just living your life. It's just sort of easy to fall in love with a projection of who you want other people to think you are. And so, yeah, I think the identity issue has been a challenging one for me. But, I've kind of come to surrender to it. Like, for example, like, I have a very paternal view of, for some reason, of it. Ever since I was like 12 years old, I had a sort of a paternal spirit, I would say. And I just kind of feel like, there was something old school about me. There was something, even when I was 13 years old and I would talk to a 65-year-old person, I would be like, I still kind of feel fatherly in some strange way. It was very odd. And I at that time, I couldn't describe it. But when I got into my early 20s, I could find language, for it. And so I was like, well, what is that? Like, what is a paternal, sort of role that I have in people's lives? And so I think it was just that caregiving piece. It was just sort of that loving and compassion and empathy and just kind of, using encouragement as a tool and just saying, I do care. I really care about people. But in the world that I live in now, confidence is crucial, and communicating, walking in with confidence, owning the stage and being all tough. I don't know, like, it was so funny to me how my first couple of mental performance speeches and talks that I gave on stages, I at first I did them as a pastor, and I think people were just really caught off guard because, being a pastor, you sort of want to identify with people, and you're humble and you're self-deprecating at times. And you're just kind of like, I'm everybody else. I make mistakes and whatever. But sort of that aw shucks kind of thing on a stage where you're a mental performance coach, and that doesn't work so well. And so it's like I had to shift my own view of myself and just say, no. What do I believe? Like, do I believe that this stuff works? Do I believe, I have to stress test a lot of the things that I talk about, and it has to work. But am I confident that they work? And so I had to work on proving to myself that my concepts did work. And I was the first study. So it has been an identity shift for me. And it's interesting how I found that really difficult. It took me years to sort of make let that identity evolve and shift. And then I think I just, in the last couple of years, I've just embraced and said, you know what? I'm not sure I'm ever going to, stop loving people and being compassionate for people. And you know what? I think I'm just going to adopt that into my present lifestyle and, sort of sprinkle some confidence on top of that. And I think I'm going to live there. And so that's what I've just chosen to do. And one of obviously the name of my company is Elite Mindset, but my website name is Elite Mindset Nation, because I'm going to create a community and a nation of high performers and people who aren't afraid to take risks and make a difference and, accept challenges and make a difference in their community. And so that's the kind of group that I want to belong to. So I'm sort of recruiting that communal part of my history into, I wonder if I can create communities of high performers. And so I think that's been a real joy. And I'll be putting on my first conference in Las Vegas on May 5th and 6th. This isn't an advertisement because I'm still working out all the details, but just to create community around high performance and a high performance mindset. So sports, business, and mindset is sort of the theme, and creating some community around that, I think, will be really valuable.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Do you have any idea what kind of activities or things you want to do at the conference yet? Or?
I do. Yeah, I do. So I've been dreaming about this for about 8 years, and it's finally coming true. So I'm super excited about that. But, most of my stuff is interactive and participatory. And so I expect it to be that way too. So it's not going to be a day full of lectures and take notes kind of thing. It'll actually be exercises. And one of the things that I realized in my own work is that most people, I don't consider myself the greatest speaker in the world or the most talented. But what I do know is that people really, really love participating in things. And when they get a chance to put their hands on something, they learn so much better. And secondly, they get to learn from each other. And so if I can create an environment where it's participatory and people can learn from each other and network, and I can provide the frameworks for that to happen, or the questions for that to happen, or the exercises, then I can feel like we can have a really successful event. And especially if I give them tools to take back to their workplace, then that's especially powerful. And so I hope to make them look like rock stars going back to their places of employment and put some of those tools to work, and it makes them look good and helps them develop their own leadership and confidence. So yeah, I hope it's part personal development, part business development, and everything is participatory. I have something called the Game Plan for Life, which has 23 different exercises. It's a 2-day experience that I provide for my clients. So I just had a client from Canada fly in to spend 2 days with me here in Seattle, or I fly to where they are. So I've been all over America doing these game plans. And so I'll take some of the exercises from that, and then I have a game plan for business. I don't advertise that as much, but I did some strategic planning for quite some time. So it's like, how do I organize my business at a 30,000 foot level to optimize for performance? And then I have my mental performance, the playbook for the mind. So it's like, you can have a high performance mind, you can have a high performance life, and you can have a high performance business. So I'll be combining all of those 3 things in this event called One Day Elevate. So it'll be onedaylevate.com.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's actually, I think I've been to conferences where we sit and listen, and you can get excited about it, and then you take it home and you're like, but if you actually are participating and interacting, like you're building more muscle, you're building muscle memory about it. Like when we just approach things from the mind, it's hard to, our mind is full of stuff. Our mind is full of the 95% of negative thoughts we had about ourselves yesterday. So we're adding stuff, and then there's nothing that really integrates it. Like when you participate, you move your body, you interact with a person, and you practice something that is being taught, you're way more likely to retain it. Right?
It's so true. And I'm going to do something called Genius Tables, and there'll be, tables of, 7 to 10 people. And so you get a chance to share some of the challenges that you're having in your personal life or you're in your business, and you're together with other high-level leaders in the group, and each table has a host. So you get to share 3 minutes, whatever your biggest challenges are in business or in your personal life. And then you get to have 7 or 8 people around the table. They each get a minute to encourage you, and they each get a minute to offer solutions to what you're facing. And there's no way that I could replicate that from the platform. And so it's such a powerful way to get people talking and to pour into each other's life. It's just magical, especially when you, let's say, have an expert in marketing and you have a marketing issue, and then you have like 3 or 4 experts in marketing, give you advice on what to do. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
And so then you might have somebody else who's saying, I'm really struggling with my marriage. And then you have 2 or 3 marriage counselors at the table, and so it's like, how do you can't replicate that from the stage. So there is a real power in networking.
Yeah, absolutely. And the vulnerability, the courage, like sometimes that's the breakthrough that you need, just to speak out loud what you're going through instead of pretending like, oh, I don't want anybody to know that I'm not perfect and right all the time. Like,
it's pretty amazing. There's a group that I belong to that will pay to be in the spotlight, which is just super fascinating. So you pay, a couple $1,000, and then you'll be 20 or 30 people in the room, and the spotlight will be on you and your business. And then the other, 19 people will they'll give you feedback on your business and ask questions. And it's like people pay for that kind of feedback from experts. And I think it's absolutely genius.
Yeah, it is. And it makes, you become sometimes just saying it out loud. Like this is part of coaching, right? By asking questions instead of answering for the person, they hear themselves say something out loud, and then they're like, oh, that doesn't actually make any sense. Right?
It's true. There was a Harvard study done on this very thing. So how did people learn faster? By being told the answers or by discovering the answers? There was an actual study done on this. And so what they found out was that when people discover the answer, their adoption is so much faster than if they're told the answer.
Yes, that makes so much sense, because now they know why. Like if you have to sit through a lecture and learn why, and it's not experiential, the retention just doesn't.
Agreed.
Yeah, like our children do what we do, not what we say, right? So.
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating, and then to be able to ask the right kinds of questions that will draw out the wisdom that's already present within people, that's a skill. I mean, there's a lot that you can sort of do just as a friend, but if you're skilled at asking questions, it's amazing how you can help somebody.
Yeah. And that's funny, because a lot of people believe that they want to be told the answers. Like, for example, I was talking with someone this morning about how therapists are some of the most messed up people there are. And I was like, well, yes, of course they are. That's how they learned about the human psyche. Like, you wouldn't be curious about that if you weren't going through some kind of challenge that like a kid who's having a blast and everything's accepted about them is not interested in human behavior. Like they're interested in playing because they're free. They already feel free. But a kid who's being, feeling like everything about me is wrong is going to be like, why?
Yeah. And there's a certain
degree in their head and my head. And
yeah. There's a certain degree of empathy that you have when you've experienced something on your own.
Yeah. And so it's funny, because a lot of people want to learn from someone who looks perfect, who looks like they've never gone through a challenge and they have it all figured out and they're put together and they're wearing a business suit or whatever. But what we're finding now as we're growing in personal development and mental health is becoming more and more open and spoken about, less stigmatized. We're noticing that actually we relate to people who are more authentic. We know nobody's perfect. And if I'm trying to heal, like for me, sexual and religious trauma are like my wheelhouse of things that I help with because I have experienced them. And I would not want to learn from somebody who had not experienced them, because how would they know anything about it aside from what they read in a textbook? Like, there's something about the experiential knowledge of going through it that is so much more helpful. Like instead of, somebody talking down at you, giving you advice, admonishing you, when because they have no empathy, because they've never experienced it, you're not going to get results. You need that compassionate curiosity, that kind of inquiry.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a skilled coach or therapist, you can still do a really amazing job, but there's something different about someone who's gone through something. I remember reading a quote one day that said, never trust anybody that doesn't have a limp, and like if they've been through battles, they're worth listening to. I had a friend of mine just recently spoke publicly, and and I, on my Facebook page, I said, always listen to a dying man, or a dying woman.
Yeah.
Always listen, because they have something really amazing to say. And so he's been given 6 months to a year to live. And so what he had to say was pretty profound. And I've lost, probably 3 or 4 friends in the last year and a half that were in my inner circle to various diseases. And so, I'm, well familiar with death and dying and suffering. And, I've had a couple of family members pass away early as well. But there's so much value in saying, if someone was to come to me and talk about death and dying, and I was a chaplain for 7 years at Veterans Hospital, in their chaplaincy department, but I've been around that a lot. And so it's like, I don't actually have a lot of answers other than to say that I grieve with you. I know what it's like. And sometimes the power of presence is more important than anything that we'll ever say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, it's, the fear of death is one of the things that causes us to not do so much of our life, so much of what we want to do, not take risks. And so I'm, for example, it's not death, but I have a knee injury, I heal it and whatever, but there's certain things I won't do again. Like the thing that I did that caused the knee injury, like an inflatable obstacle course across a pool. I'm not going to do that again. It didn't go well the last time. But we have, it's actually interesting. I feel like people who have a near-death experience, really where they kind of die for a minute and then they're brought back. They seem to have a little less fear around.
Yeah, they seem quite changed. NDE experiences and some of the studies on that are pretty fascinating. There's a lot of commonalities between countries and ethnicities, and there's a lot of commonalities, but one of them is that they live with less fear. And I think that's what a wonderful gift to give to someone, is to live with less fear. And I chose in my life, I feel like, one of the phrases that I use is that if I'm fully surrendered to the way that I've been created and just to life, then what could go wrong? And I've just chosen to live my life that way. And I'm so glad that I have, because it's removed a lot of the fears that I might have over my life. And I just don't concern myself with them. But I've just kind of come to the point where I've surrendered to it. And, and one might say, well, yeah, Gary, a lot of things could go wrong. Like you could get cancer, and this could, your spouse could die, and this and that, and all sorts of other. You're right. And I have no control over those things at all. And so what if I just said, what could go wrong? What could go wrong if I'm living my life to my fullest, and whatever, hand I get dealt in life, what if it was just always the right hand? And I had opportunities to learn and live and grow through them.
Yeah. And then that comes back to where your focus goes, your energy flows. Like if I'm constantly worried about my spouse getting cancer or myself, I used to, because we have a family history of breast cancer, I used to spend a lot of time checking and really concerned about it. And then I kind of when I started to do more spiritual work, and I was like, why am I thinking about this all the time? This is not going to help me not get cancer.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Or if anything, it's actually going to, you actually might create problems. Your physical body is a reflection of how you think and what you think about. So it might actually have a negative, sort of, weird effect in that way.
Yeah, it can attract it. It can be the vibrational match to the illness. And And I experienced that like when I tore my MCL on that inflatable obstacle course. And I just playing with my kids, like thinking, oh, I'm going to play. And then I got scared and I didn't fully commit to jumping to the next thing. I kind of hesitated and it caused a twist and then a pop. And, that fear thing came in and that's where things went wrong. But to heal it, I took anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, nutrition, blah, blah, blah. A lot of college. I went to college for a long time trying to decide what to major in. But so I didn't go to the doctor. Like I knew what it was and I knew basically what to do, rest, ice, alternate heat and ice. There were different opinions about that. But to do like my own physical therapy exercises, but one of the things that I did that was really important was visualizing it healing and spending a lot less time worrying about it not healing than visualizing it healing. And it did heal. And it's pretty much, I don't really feel it anymore, maybe occasionally. But that's kind of like Joe Dispenza does those meditations about healing the body. And that's kind of what he's known for, right? He had some kind of major spinal injury that he healed himself from through meditation and visualization. Have you heard of all that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So again, just focusing on things that we want and that we desire and that bring us joy and happiness and pleasure, helps us get to where we want to go more than trying to avoid the things we don't want. So how do people get a hold of you, find you, and some of the ways that you work with people?
Yeah, so I certainly do a lot of coaching. So Game Plan for Life is my 2-day experience that I have. So people can inquire about that on Instagram. I check my Instagram messages all the time. So a lot of my clients live there. So that's kind of where I mostly am, and LinkedIn, but mostly Instagram. And so, yeah, you can send me a message there. I'm Elite Mindset with the blue verification dot, and people can look me up there. And then I do the playbook for the mind, which is a mental performance piece that I use with professional athletes and business people. And so it's just how to think for achievement and success, and how to be really good at what you do. So that's what I do with professional athletes. And yeah, by all means, I would love to hear from everyone. I do have a free gift to give your audience, and that is I created in December. I just finished it. It took me about 1.5 years to write, but it's a mental performance assessment. And so if you type in Elite 50, you can get 50% off the assessment. And it's one of the most thorough mental performance assessments on the internet. And I know these things because I study and I nerd out over them. So I think it's one of the best ones out there. So you'll be able to find out and pinpoint with precision what areas of my mindset do I need to work on that will pay off and pay big dividends if I just address and pay attention to. So it's elitemindset.assessment.com. And then if you type in all caps Elite and 50, you get 50% off the assessment. So yeah, that people can find me there and work with me and just go to hold of me and contact me. And if they want to talk more, I'd be happy to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with before we close?
Well, other than take control of your life. A lot of people feel like a victim and things are happening to them. But if you can change your locus of control from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control, and that is that you get to determine what makes a successful day for you. And so if you can write down 5 to 7 things that put you in the best position to have a successful day, make those as a habit or a rhythm in your life as much as you possibly can, because they put you in the best position to succeed. Because you can't control those outcomes, but you can certainly put yourself in the best position to succeed. And that would be my encouragement I'd love to leave with your audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate you being here, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me.